Why hello there, welcome back to another episode of StumpsCraft. I am Elodie and I have an incomplete viaduct thing that we are going to finish off today with a bit of detailing and working on this main pillar, which is made out of a different material entirely because we're going to make this all dusty crusty. This is a derelict structure, so we are going to try and make it look as abandoned and reclaimed by nature as possible to match our little starter house down here. Ow, I just dove into my shrubbery. So, we're going to get straight into a time-lapse here, where Editor Elodie is going to read to you some limericks that she wrote. Yep. Go ahead. This is Editor Elodie, and I am not feeling happy. To write a limerick, let's get this over quick and make this segment snappy. As you can see, I'm using copper, stacked upon my terracotta. Next it's over to birch whilst building this and scaffolding in a jotter. Lastly, I'm replacing this edge and constructing a similar wedge. With a gradient bold, is this bit getting old? Staining these pillars with dredge. Subscribe for more poetry. Alright, well, that is the pillars basically done. Hopefully you can see a rough outline of what I'm going for here. I wanted this to be just a messy sort of different gradient in our palette here, to separate the build from the usual whites of the mountain and sort of incorporate this story into it. This area has been left dormant for many years, and so it is eroding over time, helping to give us three things: segmenting the build into little details, helping to cut down on the copper that I'm using, because that's expensive, and making a pretty damn cool elytra course. But next up on the agenda is, first of all, I've got to do the back of the base. Not particularly excited to do this, so I will skip to a quick time-lapse of me doing it. In 3, 2, 1... Wow, wasn't that fun? Whoa, how fast? I haven't done it yet. But when that's done, which you've just seen it be done, I'm gonna cut to me working on the actual detailing. Say hi, future me. Hi, past me. Yeah, the base is done in the backside at least. Now we've got to work on the detailing and these underneath bits. Instead of doing a time-lapse for this segment, I think that I'll go step by step and sort of show my thought process as I go through this, as this build isn't particularly planned out. I am sort of going on the fly. So currently what I'm thinking this build needs is 3 elements, if you don't include the massive pillar that we'll do at the end, which is 1, a gradient going under here, so these top areas are actually darker, so I think we're going to transition back into these for this as we get darker. Same for this texturing here, up there. It needs some sort of notch or line across the top here, because these areas are very flat, which I do like, but it does need to be sort of segmented across here, I think. And lastly, looking at the build from this angle, I feel like these bamboo shoots sort of represent the fact that it would be quite nice to have some vines going up the side of particularly these 2 pillars, which don't have much going on at the moment compared to the main one. This final pillar, which we'll work on at the end, is actually thicker than the others by 1 block, so that it can sort of end in a final strut, and we'll have a main building here looking out, so this is basically serving as a bridge or hallway for the rest of the base between these 2 areas. Oh, to think this was all organized when I started. Okay, so I think I'm gonna start off immediately in a slightly darker gradient and then move up and then slowly transition down to tough as we meet these segments. And for now, I'm not gonna do anything fancy with like slabs or anything. I'm just gonna see how it looks with no inset. That doesn't actually look too bad. I think I'm going to start the tough from a bit lower down and then work out a gradient just for this first line here. But I think overall that works quite well. Instead of adding a transition block here actually, I think it's better if I transition this whole slopey bit here. There we go. That sort of segments it a bit nicer, I think. And let me copy this over to this side, and then we'll start thinking about the gradient for this yellower section. Let's start off with the terracotta, work our way into dripstone, and end off with our lovely acacia bark. How does that look? Okay, I think I want to gradient this down fully on this side, just because this is extremely harsh. Alright, there we go. And now just the same on these bits. The underneath is now complete, but we have one big pillar to work on. This is going to be a chunky one that's going to stand as the front of the base with some nice castle struts. Stumps' base actually really shows, I want to do this sort of palisade segmentation at the top. Then we've got one more arch, a nice strip across the top, and finish it off with some vines. And then I think we're good. I already showed off in the last episode, which you should totally watch after this one if you want to see how all of this got constructed in the first place. These pillars being built fully, so I'm just going to cut ahead until this pillar is created like so. Wablammo! Wow, that's a whole tower right there. As well as another archway done, I have finished this tower. Well, slightly finished. I've run out of quartz. With these windows here and having this weathered effect, which I love, that I've been using here, but the idea of it just draping down from these windows, I just love. But yes, a lot thicker in this pillar, and it definitely segments the build the way I wanted it to, with this sort of effortlessly careening into the side of this pillar here, stopping this build from otherwise being extremely flat. And speaking of flat, we need to add this strip I've been talking about. Now I'm just going to experiment quickly and see how thick we want this and what material by starting off with calcite. How does this look? Yep, I think we can go back on that decision. Instead, working with an inset might be better. Oh my god, I think that improves it by so much. Because it makes this top area look like it's extended out like a lip, but really it's flush with the rest of it. Having it extended out actually, I think would be too much and would mess with this pillar being aligned with it. Now we just need to work on these windows as well. And I'm dead. I'm just going to temporarily block up these windows with mud whilst we don't have interior. Alright, and let's add a third window. Might need to get some oak because this transition is very bright. Since this is on the darker segment, that transition now makes this sandstone look a little too bright. Perhaps transitioning from oak to birch would work. There we go. I think that works very well. And let's see if the same sort of indentation would work on this. There we go. I think that's looking really good. There we are. I tried to do the gradients based on what materials they were on and what elevation going off of this, and I think it's turned out quite good. But overall this is still very monochrome, and I think we need to pop a bit of colour in there with the vegetation. So, let's go get some leaves. Birch leaves specifically, as I think it will work well with the white. And in one final transition, let's put these leaves on this building. Whoa. Yeah, my elytra's broken, so I'm not going to finish that transition, but we have got the vines in place. You can see here the lovely transition between the natural side taking over to the erosion and then into the more pristine area of the ice palace. We've got some dangly vines going through our detailing over the windows here, and coiling up the main shaft of this palace. So that was a step-by-step guide on how to make your build look more weathered and hit by natural disaster and erosion over several years, as this palace has been left dormant. Now there are a few things that I would want to update. namely different leaves so that we could have some little speckled spots of different colour, some lights, perhaps lanterns or shroom lights going throughout it, and adding some stuff to the back here because this is quite tattered and I do want to spruce this up a bit more. But overall, for one episode's work, this is pretty damn good. If you enjoyed this episode of StumpsCraft and would like to see more, then here is the last video in the series, and here is the first episode if you're a diehard fan and want to go all the way back to the start. Until then, I will be returning to my castle, and I will see you next Saturday for another video. Goodbye!